When I was 14, I lived in a small town. My dad was there on temporary assignment. It was the summer of my 8th grade year, and we were about to move back to the city. I had a friend, Lawrence, who I met at the local middle school. Since my family was leaving in a couple of weeks, she let me stay the night over at Lawrence's house. Lawrence was a cool guy, but always tried to act tougher than he really was. That morning, Lawrence tells me he found a cave in the woods about 2 miles out and said, "We should go exploring." In my naive 14-year-old mind, I thought this was a great idea. I mean, what is the worst that can happen? So we go to the location. It's pretty far in the woods and very hidden. When we walk in, we discover that other people had been there before. We see beer bottles, potato chip bags, and other convenience store junk. Then, a little further in the cave, we stumble on this area. This is when my nope meter started jumping. The area had a putrid smell and was lined with garbage. I saw a few needles. At the time, I didn't know what they were for. A grocery bag that seemed to be their portable outhouse, and a makeshift bed. Someone was living there. I know there are homeless people in the area, but I am on high alert at this point. I saw some other stuff that I later came to realize were sex toys, a ball gag, rope, among other things. I am getting nervous at this point. We are in a potentially crazy homeless person's den. Then the next thing I found was beyond creepy. It looked like a photo album. I picked up the album with one hand and held my flashlight with my other trembling hand. First thing I saw looked like vintage photos of a prison. However, then I saw a picture of a pile of bodies. I immediately recognized this was a Holocaust photo because one of them was wearing a star on his uniform. The whole page looked like graphic concentration camp photos. When I tried flipping the page, I noticed the next 2 pages were stuck together. Then I saw some gooey substance. It took a second to register what I was seeing. Keep in mind, I was only 14 at the time. Then it hit me like a bag of bricks. This man was pleasuring himself to these pictures. I froze in sheer terror because I had never imagined anyone being that screwed up. It is hard to describe the other feeling I had. It's like a feeling you get when you experience evil or something. At this point, my nope meter jumped from 9 to about 20. Before, I was worried if I told him we need to leave, then he would call me the P word. At this point, I didn't care. I said we need to get out now. And to my surprise, he simply said, "Good idea." So we headed out pretty quickly. It didn't stop running until we got home. I realized when we got back to his house, he had a look of pure dread. I told him about the book. He then told me what he had found. It was another photo book with pictures of women gagged and bound. There was also a picture of what looked like a child with a badly burnt face. He then heard the sound of someone coughing and moving further down in the cave. I personally didn't hear it. That is when he came over to me and was about to tell me to run. We finally told his parents later that day. The police were called, but the only thing they found was trash. Naturally, nothing came of it. Every summer from the age of 8 until 15, I went to spend a month with my grandparents, who lived on the other side of the country. They didn't even live in a town, so to speak, as the nearest town was 20 minutes away by car. They were good, old-fashioned country folk, who grew corn, tomatoes, and cantaloupe, among other things. My grandmother's cooking, words can't describe, just absolutely delicious. There was no one that lived very close to each other out there. The closest neighbor lived 15 minutes away by foot. They owned 75 acres of land behind and to the side of their house. I had never really ventured too far away from their home during my extended stay, but when I was 15, my last summer there, after getting bored as my grandparents had traveled to a farmer's market to sell their produce, I decided to go for a walk on their property, and I stumbled upon a cave with things that I still can't get out of my mind to this day. I had no idea it was even there. My grandparents had never mentioned it before. I wondered at the time if they even knew it was there, as the entrance was not clearly visible unless you walked right up on it. I made my way inside, turning on my cell phone light so that I could see. I made my way around 100 feet in. The trail leading downward was very steep. It looked like a tunnel that just went directly down, and that was it, which was a little creepy. I'm glad I continued though, because just a few steps later, it opened up to what seemed almost like a cavernous-like space. The ceiling of the cave was far out of my reach now, and I could see stone formations stretching toward the cave floor. I brought my light down toward the floor, and I could see what looked like black objects in the distance on the far wall. I made my way over to them to see what it was. They were trash bags. How rude that people would place garbage down here. I opened one of them up to see what was inside, and for the next few seconds, I don't remember taking a breath, as the sight of what was in front of my eyes was more than my mind could comprehend in that moment. Inside were mangled and mutilated bodies of cats. The smell was so rancid, it's like I could feel it burning my nose. I opened another bag just to see if it was more of the same, only to find bones. I'm guessing of decomposed cats, but I really don't know. At that moment, I heard a noise come from the other side of the cave. I immediately shot my light in the direction of the noise. I saw a small opening that appeared to be another tunnel. I couldn't see very far down it at all. I brought my light to the floor near the tunnel opening I had just found. I could see something lying not 2 feet from it. What is that? I remember thinking. Upon approaching it, I suddenly recognized what I was seeing. At that moment, I felt the blood drain from my head, and a lump the size of a golf ball form in my throat. It was a body. The bones of a small child. I ran to the entrance tunnel and made my way as quickly as I could outside and back to my grandparents' house. Who do I call? There is no town, so there isn't any police. I decided to just go in the house and make myself some dinner and watch a movie or two. The next day, I received a phone call from my grandma, stating that they would be staying another day to sell some things. I, of course, asked her about the cave. She did know about it, but had never been in there. I didn't mention what I found, as I knew it would scare her to death. I decided to go back to the cave later that day. I don't know why. Morbid curiosity, I guess. This time, though, there was a ripped piece of grungy paper hung with a fishing line that had been tied around one of the rocks on the top of the entrance to the cave. It simply read, "Don't touch them again." Needless to say, that was enough excitement for me that day, and I got in my car and drove to where my grandparents were. I told them everything that had happened. My grandfather drove back with me a couple hours later and made his way to the cave with police officers from the county. They didn't find a person, but they did find the things I had described, as well as more trash bags in the second tunnel inside the cave. The other discovery was indeed the bones of a child. They later found out the bones belonged to a child that had gone missing from a town almost 4 hours away. Nothing more has been found out, or at least not that I know of. I don't just come across caves every day or anything, but I pretty much guarantee if I ever find another one, I won't be making my way inside.